No, I'm not going to turn like this.
No, that's okay.
Hi, welcome to Chapter and Verse. We have a fabulous program today, very topical, very current, I must say, because of the movie Oppenheimer. People are thinking about this matter anew. It was once a very consuming topic in America. It kind of started out with Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein went and knocked on the door of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he says he knew other physicists. There was a community of physicists, and he said to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he said, "You must do something. You must do it soon." And he said, because the other side is very close to getting the bomb. And if they get the bomb, God help us. So Franklin Delano Roosevelt put the Manhattan Project on speed. And it went pretty well. Franklin Delano Roosevelt didn't have a very good relationship with Harry Truman. Franklin Delano Roosevelt thought that Harry Truman was dispensable, and that's to say the least. He wouldn't let him in on cabinet meetings. He was vice president. He wouldn't do very much at all, you know, in terms of the help of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But Albert Einstein came back to the White House after the Manhattan Project was ready to go. And he said to President Truman, he said, "You must not use the bomb. We've got everything ready now. We're not going to be a distant second. We've got the bomb." And it was very difficult because, and I wanted to talk with you about this, because of the exigencies of the situation. We all believe that an indiscriminate bombing or an indiscriminate murder is morally wrong. It's immoral. As Billy once suggested to me, he said it is immoral to kill the baby at the breast, the elderly, and other people who are not combatants. He said that it's just not right. Things got a little confusing because Mr. Truman got a report that that the Emperor of Japan had decided to turn the civilian population into combatants. He told the farmers, "You got pitchforks, run these Americans right through when they reach the island." And that created a problem because finding innocent non-combatants became a problem. One of the exigencies. Another thing, Mr. Truman was trying to do diligence with it, and he said, "Well, let's find out where we're at. Find out where we're at. How much money do we have?" And the report that came back to him was, "We got no money to do a conventional war. We got none. Savings bonds are all sold out. We can't sell any more, and you got nothing." And then he said to the Army and the armed forces, he said, "What'll happen if we take the island of Okinawa?" And his armed forces people said to him, "You will lose 1 million soldiers in that effort." Now, until then, there was only about 400,000 armed forces people who had given their lives until then. But all of a sudden, Truman was faced with 10 times that amount in one effort without any money. And so he, Oppenheimer said to him, let's backtrack. He said, we don't want to hurt people who are non-combatants. And Mr. Truman said, you're a crybaby. That's what he said to Oppenheimer. Was that in the movie?
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yes.
He accused Oppenheimer of being a crybaby, as if there was no moral aspect to the subject. But these exigencies, Truman was saying, America will not stand by and let me sacrifice 1 million more soldiers. They won't do it. He said, we got dragged into war at Pearl Harbor, where we lost about almost 3,000 people, civilians, and enlisted men too, almost 3,000. And actually, I have a note about just how many servicemen lost their lives. In Pearl Harbor, 2,335 civilians and service members lost their lives. And Truman said, America will not stand for that. We'll have to have a conditional surrender with Japan. If they kill 1 million of our soldiers, we got nothing left. We got no money, we got no soldiers. We'll have to surrender to Japan. And we'll all be speaking Japanese. And
Ray, you're getting into the past quite a lot here.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing.
The issue of morality of what happened then,
right.
I think is a little bit different from the morality today.
Oh, really? Say a bit about that.
Well, when you look at, back then, in the end of World War II, there was 2 nuclear weapons in existence.
Yes.
And of course, they were both used for whatever reason. They might have been used to try to beat over Japan quickly, or they might have been used, some historians say, to show the Russians that we had it.
Yeah.
But nowadays, we're in a different situation. We're in a situation where we are threatened and the Russians are threatened on both sides.
Mad.
It's as if the weapons that we are making here in Rhode Island are aimed at us.
Yeah.
So in order to look at the morality of these weapons, you have to look at the effects of them.
Oh, yes.
And if you guys don't mind, I'll start with a little, I've got a spiel about the effects, okay? There's some people, a lot of people here in the USA today that don't think about nuclear weapons at all in their daily lives.
A lot of us don't.
But there are some, like myself, who think about it every day. I wake up in the morning and I look out at the birds in the sky and the bushes, and I say, wow, it's so nice to see them green and not burned.
Yes.
Now, if there was a nuclear war, okay, let's start with our cars. Okay,
yes.
We Americans love our cars. They're shiny. They've got this nice glass that protects us as we scream along the highways.
Yes.
We love to pat them down and polish them.
Yes.
We love to put new tires on them. We love the feeling when we're on a highway and we tromp down on our right foot and then we get pushed back into the car by the acceleration.
Yes.
But think what would happen to our cars in a nuclear war. Okay?
Yes.
First of all, the paint would all be burned off.
Yes.
The glass would be melted.
Yes.
The tires would be all burned. The cars would be hulks. And of course, there would be no gasoline to put in them because there would be no electricity to pump the gas stations. There would be no telephone service so we could call for help. There would be no delivery to our supermarkets to bring us food. And of course, there would be no drivers because we ourselves would be dead in the blast and the fire from the nuclear weapons.
Yes.
If you look at you look on the internet, what would happen to the whole east coast of the USA in a nuclear war? Bing, 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 there's red circles all the way from Maine down to Florida. We would be blasted over and over again during the nuclear war. And we would be killed by the explosion, by the fire, okay? Then there would be the radioactivity.
Yes.
Whoever survived the initial blast would succumb to the radioactivity that comes across the nation with the westward flow of air. All the other bombs that were exploded out in Iowa and California and Kansas,
yes,
all the radioactivity would come over us. And what does that do to you? Well, when you look at what happened in Hiroshima, the people that survived the bombing,
yes,
they were a little bit out on the outskirts of the city. They would walk out further out, and they'd find their relatives, and their relatives would grab their arm, and all the skin and bone, all the skin would come off their arms, and just the bones would be left.
Oh,
Because that's what the radiation does to you.
yeah.
So this is the type of effect that a nuclear war would have today on us here in Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. Now, we can talk about the morality of it. We can talk about are there ways to avoid nuclear war? And I'm sure that you guys can talk about that.
Yes.
So, but
I think that's why I brought up the exigencies. If the exigencies had been different with Truman, although he didn't enjoy a lot of public support, the old saying was, to err is divine. But with Truman, to err is Truman. They turned that around. But still, the exigencies, I think, trump that. If he had a lot of money and an armed forces which could deal with the taking of Okinawa, things might have been different. He might have listened to Albert Einstein, and he might have tried to do something beneath nuclear level.
Well, I think a month from now, or a year from now, or 5 years from now, we don't want to have to say things could have been different.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason we're here today is to say we want to prevent nuclear war.
Yes.
We don't want anybody to have to experience a nuclear explosion, because, like even a week from now, we don't want to have to say things could have been different. And so going forward, we want to place our emphasis on the prevention of nuclear war, so no one will have to experience the horrors of nuclear war again.
Yes.
And one thing that we say is that nuclear war is an existential threat.
Oh, yes.
Well, what does existential mean? Well, existential means human life. So if we say that nuclear war is an existential threat, what that means is that nuclear war has the capacity to eliminate human life. Think about that.
Oh, yes.
it's not just the blast and the fire, the initial explosion. It's the nuclear winter that would be caused, and that
Yes.
would be worldwide.
Right.
Yes.
People all around the world would be devastated because there would be no crops for years and years, and it would be a total
would be
devastation of
terrible.
human culture.
Yeah, so it's, I think one line of discussion is to debate, the use of nuclear weapons in the Second World War. That's kind of like one line of discussion.
Yes.
But probably the current line of discussion should be, how are we going to prevent that from happening in the future? So,
That was my point.
yeah.
How do you think the politicians are doing today, dealing with the exigencies that we have today? I know that Mr. Biden is attempting to not get us into a third nuclear war, by keeping the war in
Ukraine.
Ukraine, by keeping it from being too damaging to Putin. And he said that anything else would alarm Putin, and maybe he'll push a button. So Mr. Biden is trying to deal with those exigencies, and I'm sure other people would be concerned about the exigencies as well. What would happen if Mr. Trump were president again? Maybe. Well, how do you think the politicians are doing?
You know, the Russians have already threatened the use of nuclear weapons if their national interests were threatened. And I believe the head of Belarus has said the same thing, that they would use nuclear weapons if their national interests were threatened. So we already have people in political circles saying that they're willing to use nuclear weapons if they have to. So that's pretty scary, because obviously once one country starts using nuclear weapons, then the whole thing can escalate into a world war of nuclear weapons. So you say, how are the politicians doing? I think the politicians are doing very poorly, because here we are in a situation where tomorrow human existence could be ended if we had a nuclear war or even a nuclear accident. And from my perspective, the politicians are not giving this issue an appropriate amount of attention. I mean, this is an existential threat. And you would think that we would do everything possible to prevent it, but from my perspective, our political system is not delivering. It's not coming up with enough solutions.
Well, and to your point, I mean, not only do we want to talk about, what happened, right, historically, and so understanding sort of where we're coming from with development of nuclear weapons in World War II, and then preventing it, like Bill saying, going forward. But I think we even have to zoom out from that and remind people that this is still a real life current issue, right? Like you were saying that I'm not sure, previous to Oppenheimer being such a hit in the theaters, I'm not sure that nuclear weapons were on the minds of, say, the millennial generation, right? For example, it's not something that we see as right in front of us, a possible threat of all the political issues and of all the social justice issues that we want to work on. I don't think a lot of younger folks think of it that way. So our work is also to remind folks that it is. This is what it looks like. Minds. Exactly.
The young people are doing video games and not thinking about the ravages of nuclear war.
Or they might be active on other political issues, right? I mean, I think we talk about what else is going to an existential threat, and I think about the way that you describe, nuclear war and nuclear winter, and I think about climate change as doing all those things as well.
Right.
And so young people are very active on climate change, for example, but then this issue seems to have faded, so it's important to do the work on it.
But if you look wider around the world, the smaller countries of the world are very cognizant of this type of threat. And starting in 2017, through the United Nations, the smaller countries of the world negotiated this new UN treaty. This is the treaty that we're promoting here in Rhode Island. It's a treaty that makes nuclear weapons illegal now in 68 countries around the world. 68 countries have ratified this treaty, where nuclear weapons cannot be built, cannot be moved around, cannot be brought through these countries. And what we're doing with Pax Christi and the Quakers in Rhode Island is promoting this treaty to try to raise the issue that the United States could certainly sign this treaty before we ratify. We could sign it and use it as a diplomatic leverage point to get other nations around the world, the other nations with nuclear weapons like Russia, like France, England, China, to join us and say, yes, we want to take the weapons apart. Here's a vehicle, this new UN treaty, and all the nations could get together. They could make a conference, and they could ratify the treaty at the same time. So that there was no one nation left with the weapons, and the other ones weren't.
Well, actually, there's a bill in the U.S. Congress, in the House of Representatives. It's called the Nuclear Abolition and Climate Conversion Bill. It's H.R. 2775, and this resolution would pledge support from the United States to this new United Nations treaty on nuclear prohibition. So there is at least a first step in terms of the political process to get nuclear disarmament on the agenda in the U.S. Congress. But it's not, the issue is not getting nearly enough attention. The other major existential threat that we have is obviously climate change. And I think there is a lot of attention to climate change, in the media, in political circles, in general conversation. But the other existential threat, which is nuclear weapons, does not get that same level of attention in the media or in political circles. So nuclear disarmament is not getting enough attention to actually address the problem.
Is that because there's a helplessness within us? What could happen? Russia promised Ukraine, if they gave him their nuclear weapons, he would never attack them.
Yeah.
Famous last words.
I think it's because, I think the lack of attention is because people are terrified.
Yes.
I think deep down inside in our psyches, we're
It's
so
terrifying.
scared
Yeah.
that we ignore it.
Yeah. Well, when China says everything is on the table if you bother us when we try to eat Taiwan, to use the expression of Nikki Haley. And that may be true. People are, the thing is, somebody once said that it only takes one country to start a war.
Right.
It's not something that we can kind of coordinate with other people and ratify a document. When Russia thinks it's in their interest to turn us into a bunch of slaves, then they'll do it. If China gets to the point where they can turn us into a bunch of slaves, they'll just do it unless there's peace through strength.
I think that's part of the issue, isn't it? Is this mindset idea that whether we're talking about U.S. and global empire or any other country, that the fight is for militaristic solutions.
Yes.
Right? The fight is for violent solutions as opposed to diplomatic solutions like the TPNW that these guys are referencing, like global nonviolent interests, right? So we say in Catholic circles that if you want peace, you have to work for justice.
Yes.
Right? So peace only
saying.
happens when justice is achieved, that people can eat, people feel safe, people aren't living in poverty or forced migration. And so you deal with these issues on the ground towards peace, and those are global interests, right, as opposed to the military solution.
And you have to also step back, one step further back. A nuclear war wouldn't necessarily be started by a nation. It wouldn't be Putin deciding, no, I'm gonna bomb Ukraine. A nuclear war could start any moment, right now, by accident, by a machine going wrong, by an electronic glitch,
or
by
a robot,
a miscommunication, by some kind of mishap.
Yes.
And that's happened at least 15 times.
Really?
Over the last 70 years. Yeah, if you look on Wikipedia.
Yes.
There have been 15 times over the last 70 years when nuclear war almost started. And how was it avoided? Sometimes it was a mistake on the U.S. side, and the U.S. guys caught it just in time. And sometimes it was on the Russian side. There was a time when the Russian radar showed some glints in the sky. The sun was glinting off some clouds, and it looked like there was four U.S. missiles headed toward Russia. And this Russian colonel, all the other people in the control room wanted to press the button and send their missiles over to us.
Yeah.
But this one Russian colonel said, no, let's think about it. If the U.S. was attacking, they wouldn't be sending just 4 missiles, they'd be sending hundreds.
Yeah.
So he said,
Good
no,
point.
we're not going to start a war. And it turned out it was a false alarm.
Yeah, important.
So when you
point.
walk down the street and someone says, "Oh, I don't trust the Russians," you're trusting the Russians right now. You're trusting the Russians not to start a war on purpose or by accident.
And what do U.S. resources in our military budget look like that also bolsters that, right? How much money, how many billions of dollars does our budget contribute toward continued development of nuclear weapons, other parts of the military-industry complex? Like, what is it that the budget's a moral document. What does the U.S. budget say about our morals and ethics, particularly as they relate to global war, to other nations, right, and to nuclear weapons in particular? It doesn't look very good.
No, there's still R&D, I guess.
Well, it's the construction of a new fleet of nuclear armed submarines right here in Rhode Island.
Yes.
It's a local issue for us.
Important, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Are we out of time?
Oh yes, we have to wrap it up. Let's pick this up next week.
Sorry, I could keep talking for another hour.
We all could. Thanks.
Thank you.
3 minutes left. 3.
Three
Okay.
more minutes,
Well,
okay.
we can have a chance to give us your names again, and then a statement, which would last maybe 30 seconds at the end of this program, and we'll pick the whole thing up to the beginning of next program.
you want me to start?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want me to go now?
Yes.
Okay, my name is William Waters, and I'm a member of Pax Christi, Rhode Island, and we're a local peace group, but we're also affiliated with Pax Christi USA and
Yes.
Pax Christi International, and one of our top priorities is nuclear disarmament, because we realize that nuclear weapons are an existential threat to the human race, and probably could be the biggest public health problem that we've ever seen in the history of mankind. So
Oh yes.
we're really focusing on nuclear disarmament, and we're trying to get approval for the United Nations Treaty on Nuclear Disarmament.
2 more minutes.
Sure.
30 seconds.
Sure. So I'm Angie Howard-McParland, and I work for the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas on our justice team. So Sisters of Mercy is one of the largest congregations of Catholic women religious in the U.S. and globally, and then we have a team of folks that work on social justice issues. And we work on what we call 5 different critical concerns, right? These are the areas that we focus on, and they are earth, immigration, racism, nonviolence, and women. And so
Interesting.
nonviolence obviously means we work on things like gun violence, we work on domestic violence as that intersects with women, but we work on anti-war, we work on peace issues, and nuclear
Yes.
disarmament is a platform of that and crucial. It's a local issue for sisters and associates here. It's a national issue, like those saying it's a global issue.
30 seconds left.
Okay, very briefly, William W. Smith III, brought up as a Quaker. Now I'm affiliated again with Pax Christi because of their work to try to contain and reverse the nuclear arms race. And I'm a banner maker. If you see a banner along the side of the street saying, "Let's join the UN treaty to ban nuclear weapons," that's probably my banner.
And the truck. You got the truck?
I have it on my truck
On the
also.
truck. Okay. Well, thank you for watching us today. Please tune in again next week, the same channel at the same time. And see everybody next week. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.